Hey, can you check Ileo Pro Bono and go to the calendar and click on the educational seminar? Good. Yeah, we just got in and I think his camera's better, so it wasn't as difficult to set up. Yeah, I just plugged it in and it just seems to be working, so. Great. So you see the room, and I'm going to go to the front of the room and then tell me if you can hear me. Testing, testing. Sorry, we're testing the video camera here. Testing, testing. Educational seminar series for the interns and fellows on meeting the needs of diverse clients in the legal aid arena. Um, Hey, the food people are here. So, I was kind of talking quiet, I think, so I can try again and talk louder. Is there a bad echo or anything like that? Like, I could try to work that thing where we click on it. Okay. Just quiet. Okay, at least we're not getting that, because last time we used to get that quite a bit. Okay, let me go to setting. Oops. I try to fix the volume. The food's here, yeah, they're here trying to figure that out. Okay, so if I increase the volume, I wonder if you can hear better or if there's gonna be more feedback. Okay, I'm gonna go to the front of the room. Okay?
Yeah. No, yeah, it'll be great. Thank you.
Testing, testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, testing. This is the intern and fellow educational seminar series on June 20th, and the title of the seminar will be Meeting the Legal Needs of Diverse Clientele Populations.
What? Can I take the top one? Oh, that one. Okay.
Yeah? Okay. And no echo or anything? Great.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, can't think of anything else, but I'll text you or call you just in case I think of it. Okay, sounds good. Bye. That's really embarrassing. Oh wow.
I really don't know. What I think it's not. What's in there? The long one at the bottom. I think actually that one's really cool. Oh, the salad.
Oh, the salad. Yeah. We definitely have a lot of salad. And then
You take so much heat at, and then it's just so long.
like only one for chicken and one for oh, and then I would like that's what I was hummus. Just all the beans. I think we should put that on this later, because sometimes the movie is sorry, waffle. Alright, did you want to follow up with the water?
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure it's okay. It's the actual summary.
Sure, I can feel like this isn't enough.
Well, you can just mention it. We can just say like, please realize I just felt we're not fully people here, so.
Or just like, if you're not, if like, we say to walk over it.
Or vegetarians, yeah. We can just let people know that as they come in.
Okay, let's go, you have to go. Okay. Really low. Yeah, thanks. That's the only one I have in there. Good.
We also have a box that I use that last time. How much should we get? Water and ice. What do you guys think? So we'll all start with the box.
This is good. Great. You're right here. Where's the other way?
I was just saying.
Okay, that's
Is it weird that it's only like half this? Like that, it's supposed to be. Usually it fills the whole thing, isn't it? I don't know this box too. I'm not reading my phone.
which will help a lot, but, I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know why you were up there. I was like, she was just like, oh, she's at Target right now. And I go up there and buy stuff for the girl section. And then so when I was talking to her, I was like, okay, now we gotta go to the other soda. Actually, can you help me with that? Door, I think the door open. Where's the door?
That's 3 minutes. Especially when there's people on the streets and you can't, like, you gotta get past them. It's the kind of person
Also known as the VIP seats. Anybody else have VIP seats? Anybody else in the list for you? Clean up my station. We followed it. What's that? We're the only people in this whole thing.
Yeah, but we're listening. Okay.
And I feel
Yeah. Whatever. I'll follow you. This one just has a camera. Yeah, well.
Okay, well, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. I know some of you are still getting your food, and I apologize, we have run out of plates. This is unprecedented in my experience with Kelly, and underscores the need for everyone to RSVP, which you all have been very good about. My name is Shayna Heller-Ogden. I work at Philly. I'm our Development and Communications Manager. I know you've been hearing from other Philly people, and I wanted to get a chance to say hello to you today. I've met several of you already. It's great to have you all here. Couple of notes before Sheila introduces our speakers. First of all, we're webcasting today's program. We'll be webcasting a select number of our programs throughout the summer. We did some last summer too. There's an archive online of programs that we've done. If you're interested in checking it out, you can do so. If you're unable to join us and are not hungry for lunch, you can watch our programs online instead of coming in. We're not going to be doing all of them, but we will be doing a lot of them. So that's something to keep in mind. We're doing it through Illinois Pro Bono, which is part of Illinois Legal Aid Online. You guys know Illinois Legal Aid Online? Yeah, you all actually applied for your affiliate through Illinois Legal Aid Online if you're affiliates. So you should know them at least a little bit. We do our webcasting through them. They're great. And the other reason I have my phone up here, not just because I'm obsessive about email, but Illinois Legal Aid Online has an app that actually has all the affiliate programs in it. So it's called Illinois Pro Bono. You can download it onto your phone and you can search for upcoming events and find the affiliate events and download them to your calendar. It's kind of spiffy. So that's an option you have. One thing you can't do through the app is RSVP. We all know how important that is. So you do still have to pay attention to the emails from Philly for that. A couple more things. These are notes just for Phillies. Phillies, we do ask you to complete service tracking forms, and we're going to be sending those out at the end of June. Just to report on the number of clients you're serving, the types of work you're doing. It's helpful to us to get more money from funders to be able to talk about what you're actually doing. So we ask that you take those seriously and fill them out promptly. There's more information about the service tracking forms available on the shared drive. Does anybody remember hearing about a shared drive for Philly? We have a shared drive. There's lots of useful things in there, and I always wonder if anyone looks at it. But in addition to stuff about your internship or fellowship, we also have handouts from speakers, the handouts from last week, and things like that. So if you need to access the shared drive, you should have the link in an email. It's something really long and complicated that I can't rattle off here. The plates have arrived. If you were waiting for a plate, the plates are here. Thank you, Julia, for running some plates. One last thing is, as Philly's Development and Communications Manager, I'm in charge of social media. And some of you are at agencies this summer that are doing a lot of like taking your picture and posting it online, and I love when that happens. And if I happen not to notice and not to reshare that picture at Philly, please flag me. Because I love to see pictures of you guys actually at your agencies. We see you once a week here, and that's great. But it's nice to see pictures of you doing something besides meeting every now and then. So if those pictures come up, I'd love to see them. If you have, an article or quotes or a big story you're working on that you want to talk to me about, I love to put that kind of stuff on Facebook. So let me know. Philly is on Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn. If you want to like and follow us, we welcome you to do so. Next week, Philly actually has 2 programs. We'll be sending out the link to RSVP probably this afternoon. There's an immigration law update on Wednesday, June 26th. That's a regular Philly program, and it will be here in this room. And then we co-sponsor a couple programs with the American Constitution Society, and we're doing one next Friday at Mayor Brown. It's the 2013 Supreme Court Review. There might be some very interesting things to review by next Friday. So that'll be a good program. For that one, you have to RSVP through the ACS website. I believe that's all the information I have for you today. Thank you for bearing with me and for being patient about the plate. Sheila is now going to introduce our speakers.
So you all are working at legal aid agencies this summer and working with a diverse group of clients with various socioeconomic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, ethnicities. So I think this seminar is going to be very useful for you all. We're very excited to have 2 great speakers here today. Our first speaker, actually we have 2 speakers, Leslie. Leslie's right over there. She is a partner and the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, concentrating her practice in public finance. And Starr is an associate at Hinshaw Culbertson and focuses on commercial litigation. And these 2 here today will give a presentation on working with diverse client populations. So please join me in thanking them for coming here today.
So we forgot one thing. Thank you for having us here. We will send this piece of paper to Sheila. But before we start, this is what we hope you'll think about after our presentation. We're going to today talk to you about bias. And so I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but we hope that our presentation makes you think differently about yourself because we are all biased. I don't think that's a surprise. to be able to say it out loud gives you power, and to work on it really gives you power. So I guess we can now start the presentation. We'll take this down, but we will send it to you.
So, good afternoon. Thank you so much, you guys, for having us. If I am rushing through this, or if you can't hear me, throw your hand in the air, let me know, and I'll slow down and try to speak up. As Leslie mentioned, this afternoon's presentation is going to be on implicit bias. Basically, implicit bias arises when you have an automatic feeling, thought, or emotion towards a particular group of people, and you're either unaware or mistaken of the source of those emotions or those feelings. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a heads up. You will feel uncomfortable during some parts of this presentation, but just go with it. I'm asking you to keep an open mind and be willing to just lend us your ears and understand that basically what you're doing is confronting, hopefully very few, implicit biases that you may be holding and rechanging your method of thinking. So, the goal of today's presentation is to first and foremost help you understand that you possess this implicit bias, and then to help you create a strategy so that you can confront, diminish, mitigate the influence of implicit biases in your life. So what we're going to start with is a few personal experiences from Leslie and myself, just so that you see that we're not trying to say that we are infallible. That really, implicit bias is something that everyone struggles with in some shape, form, or fashion.
Oh, so I get to start. So I've got two stories that show my bias, and I can't see you guys over here, so I'm going to over here. My first story is I'm very claustrophobic, and so whenever I'm in a plane, I have to sit on the aisle seat. And it just so happened I was on a plane from California to Chicago, and I was in the middle seat, and it's a full plane. And this enormous, muscular linebacker kind of guy, he later told me he's 6'7", all muscle, the kind of guy that if you were the president, you'd want guarding you, comes walking down the aisle, and I'm literally praying that he's not going to sit next to me because I'm so claustrophobic, and it's like being blocked in, and he had to block. I mean, there's no way he couldn't block me in. And he sat down next to me, and he turned to me and said, "I'm so sorry I'm sitting next to you. He worked in this really sophisticated business, and he could fly first class, and he had checked, and first class was full, and he said, I will do whatever I can do to make you feel more comfortable." And all of a sudden, my bias, I'm going to be claustrophobic, I'm going to be trapped, I can't get out, I'm going to be forced to talk to this person, all of that went away. But that was me confronting my own bias, and it was him understanding that I maybe could be biased, other people were biased in the same situations, and what he could do to address that. I have another story that's not so flattering, but it's about myself. I live on the North Shore. I'm on the train all the time. And I was on the train in an off hour, and Latina woman and her son got on the train they came in a fancy town, and a white woman and her son also entered the train at the same time. And I'm sitting on the train, multitasking, trying to do work. And the conductor comes in my compartment, and so the two women were virtually sitting across the aisle from each other. So the conductor punches the white woman and her son's ticket, and to the Latina woman, he asks, "How old is your son?" And I was not paying any attention to any of this. I was just working. He asked, "How old is your son?" And she said, whatever his age was. And he said, "Well, that'll be an extra whatever because he's not below whatever the age to drive free or discount." And the woman starts crying that she didn't have the money. And that's when I start paying attention. And if it would have been a black woman and her son, I know I would have at that moment stood up and been in full lawyer mode and say, "Why didn't you ask this woman and you're asking this one?" Or I would have paid, I would have done something. I didn't do anything until after the moment was over. And I sat and thought about it and had this exact thought. And then I went to talk to the conductor, but the moment was later and nothing was done. And that clearly was my own, maybe not bias, but not giving my resources to someone who wasn't within my charge. So,
I know that everyone in here is doing public interest work this summer. How many of you are interning with perhaps a public defender's office? Anybody? No? Okay, well, what I did for my public interest experience in law school is that for my third year, I was a public defender. I didn't get to handle anything extremely cool, no murder cases, but I got to handle a lot of drug cases, a lot of misdemeanors. And basically, after about the fourth week, I got really annoyed with having older men tell me what their sentence should be and how I should be doing my job. And finally, I asked somebody, what makes you think that you know what you're doing better than I do? And he said, oh, well, you just went to school. I've been in jail 4 times. And so, of course, I know more than you. And I had to catch myself because, on one hand, I had been in school, personal bias, what I think is the best school in the country, and I was taking the classes in the criminal adjudication, criminal procedure, criminal law, criminal advance. But this person had been in the justice system a couple of times, and while he definitely has no idea who Judge Thurman Hand is, or the difference between Justice Sotomayor and Justice Stevens, he does know a few tricks of the trade. And so instead of thinking that I was the only person who knew what was going on, I decided from that point on that if someone did have a record, I would at least hear them out and maybe think, is there anything you can offer me? Because having 2 people working towards the defendant's defense is much better than having one person at the time who was really only practicing with a 7-Eleven license. I hadn't even passed the bar yet. So that was my personal bias story of how I had to realize that being in law school and being in the justice system are 2 totally different experiences, but they're both valuable. And they both can add something if you're willing to give them a chance. Okay? So that's our bias stories. The big question is, am I biased? Research says, yes, that regardless of sex, race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, citizenship status, that everyone is dealing with some type of implicit bias or biases, and that in order to actually confront these and make a difference in how they impact your interactions with others, first of all, you have to know that you have them. There are a few different ways that you can be chipped off to what some of your implicit biases may be. When you're around particular groups of people, you can evaluate, do you or do you not give particular individuals eye contact when you're speaking with them? How close do you lean in, or how far away do you stand back when you're talking to certain groups of people? In class, you can definitely see this oftentimes. The individuals in certain classes who are given the most speaking time. Who are those individuals? There were plenty of times when I was in law school where in the middle of a lecture, someone would be able to raise their hand and offer their opinion, and then other times, someone would want to offer their opinion and the professor would say, well, hold on, we're not giving opinions now. And when you start to see that all of the people who are told, why don't you just wait until we come to the question portion are women, then you start getting annoyed. I cared a lot more about my grades than I did social justice at the time, so I never called any of my professors out on it, but at least I was able to notice it.
Studies, sorry. We're going to be interactive with each other, and we want you all to be interactive with us, so please do so. But studies show that you can just put a camera on someone, let's say in an interview, and measure this kind of thing without looking what the person they're interviewing, what they look like, and you will know whether the person that's being interviewed is in group or out group just by measuring this. So, given your roles, try to work on this when you're talking to your clients, because they're going to be measuring you by these kinds of methods to see how they evaluate your willingness to bond with them, to be with them, to help them.
So now what we're going to do is give you an example. There are a few tests that you can take. The most famous one is the IAT, which was developed through the number of years of research. It's actually still ongoing at Harvard University. And basically, one of the first very easy tests to help you understand your first thought or your first reaction is this test. So can I please have a volunteer, because I am not a fan of the Socratic method. ahead. I love you. Okay, so if you could just read either the first row down, or the first two, or 3 columns across. If you could just read and tell us what the color of each word is.
Okay.
Okay,
As
as
fast
fast as you can.
Yeah, as fast as you can. Just go through it.
Okay, purple, yellow, red, orange, green, black, green, blue, orange.
Yep, sounds good. Okay, now
Everyone can do this one. Let's see how fast everyone.
okay, you want everybody to do it in unison?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
good.
that's the slide.
Yeah, okay. So if you guys were all do this in unison and just see how fast you can go through, this is the easiest part, okay? So we're just gonna go from left to right, top to bottom, just like we were reading the book. And I'll go ahead and lead us. Purple, yellow,
red, orange, green, black, green, blue, orange, black, red, green, yellow, blue, orange, blue, red, purple.
and now in same color. Not nearly as easy as the first one. And what this is just, again, as I said before, helping you to understand your first thought and your first reaction when you're given a task. And so this is on a very basic level of how someone can measure your implicit biases.
How do I measure my bias? So fortunately for us, there were a bunch of professors, law professors, Jerry Kane from UCLA, Mazrin Banaji, I think she's still at Harvard. Many years ago, they came up with a way to measure our bias. And it's, now there have been millions of hits for it, and it's called the IAT. So the personal pledge that we forgot to cover, sorry, one of the things on the personal pledge is for you to take your IAT. So there's so many hits on the IAT that it's used as a resource for all kinds of things. People who are studying for jury selection can look at it. Scientists can look at the way our internal, and Jerry Kane calls it bugs in your head, the way our internal bugs in our head that we don't realize that we have, how that forms a filter on the way we evaluate and judge people. So the IAT has, I think there's about 20 different tests that you can, so there's race, there's gender, there's age, there's weight, there's all kinds of things. So please, I beg of you, don't just do one, do a couple. So what does the IAT do? It measures your reasoning, it measures your reaction. So the classic one is the black-white IAT. So there'll be a picture of a black person and a picture of a white person. And then there'll be words, good words and bad words. And so all you have to do, so you'll see a picture of the white face, and there'll be good words. And so all you have to do is press a button on your computer for pairing the face with the word. And so by you, and you just stutter like just a millisecond, but what the IAT does is it measures that stutter, it measures that millisecond, and through the millions of people who have taken it, it can norm your preference. So it's interesting to know what your preference is, and once you know what that preference is, you have a lot of power. So I gave this presentation with the dean of NIU Law School and the head of our HR department. And we spent literally 6 weeks reading information related to bias, having all of these articles that you'll see attached in the back, and putting together this presentation. But we did it for 3 hours, so you're just getting a condensed version of what we did. But once we got through all that information, we presented it for a county bar a couple of years ago. And at the break time, this guy came up to me and said that we had him do the black-white IAT. He came up to me and said, I guess his preference was for white people, and which isn't surprising. He came up to me and said, you know what, that test is all wrong because all I was trying to do every time I saw the face was figure out if the person was black or white, and that's why my score was the way it was, but that is bias. So when you take it, and you get the results, just reflect about it, because it's an empirical tool that is used all over in science and in law. So, let's take it to an example of IAT research. So, what did the IAT yield? So, these are some tests that we got the results through many people taking an IAT. So, for your work, the guilty, not guilty IAT, people implicitly associate black people with guilty. The way people evaluate evidence, the IAT shows that bias predicts the way you view evidence. So let's pretend the evidence is very circumstantial. If it's a diverse person who could benefit from someone thinking that it was circumstantial, who will typically not get the benefit of that. That unarmed black men are more likely to be shot than unarmed white men. That's some results that we get from the IAT. And low-income members of society are more frequent targets of discrimination. You can take this IAT research past law. So, for example, one of the IAT studies show that doctors are less likely to give pain medicine to diverse people than they are to non-diverse people. Doctors are more likely to discount pain. And so these implicit things in your head have real-life results.
And so basically, when you take the IAT and you figure out that for whatever reason you have a slight preference for overweight people, or you have a slight preference for members of the LGBT community, or you have a slight preference for members of your own racial group or your own gender group, why is that relevant? It's relevant because when you have these slight preferences for individuals in particular groups, it affects the way you interact with people who aren't in those groups. And so there's research that shows that you can take people and assign them to random groups. Even if I took everyone in here today who has on a blue shirt and put you in a group, 3 hours later, everyone with the blue shirts is going to treat everyone else who has blue shirts significantly better than they treat everyone else, even though it was a random assignment into a random group that has no bearing whatsoever on the kind of person those individuals are. And so that's why we want you guys to be able to understand your implicit biases and hopefully take the test so you can start understanding how you can combat them.
This is my second favorite slide in the whole presentation, not that one. This is the one Sarah was talking about. Because one of the key phrases here shows people allocate more resources. That's again, result of bias. If you don't address your bias, you are unintentionally devoting more resources to people you feel more comfortable with. And that's what the statement that we're going to deliver, that's what we want you all to think about, because we all do it, but we want you to think about it.
Leslie already spoke about how on the IAT, it's often easier for individuals to pair African American pictures with terms that are traditionally understood to be negative, while it's much easier, and thus they work much faster, to correlate pictures of Caucasian Americans with positive terms. There's also been studies on the IAT with immigration policy.
Oh, this must be my slide. Sorry. Yes, the underlying policy towards immigration, what people's set internal reference for that is, studies have shown that projects outward to the treatment of mainly Hispanics, and it's something that everyone should examine. This is an interesting scenario. This was tested for the IAT. This is especially interesting to me. I'm on the board of the National Association of Women Lawyers law, And part of what we're trying to do is get gender equity for women in the law, for partners, women partners, women general counsel, and women tenured law school faculty. And so this was a scenario that was done, I think, 10 years ago in the Scandinavian. There's two scenarios. The first, female science majors, because we all know that we all need more everybody in the STEM majors. So women science majors see at the conference, and almost everyone in the conference is male. So that's scenario one. And scenario two, women see a conference where there's gender equity. So I'm trying to replicate what the study must look like. So believe it or not, we got that off the web. So the next rocket science is used. So put yourself in the place of being a woman and wanting to be a rocket scientist. Does this make you feel touchy?
There's also no diversity at all.
Yeah.
Like, not only are there no women, there's like no one diverse at all. Like, these 4 guys, 5 guys, you count this creep in the back.
So that's kind of what the study is trying to do. And so what did the study show? I don't think it was surprising, but women felt less lonely, less desire to participate. And I think the third bullet is something that maybe in what you're doing you might see. They experience more psychological markers related to stress. I mean, the way the women were perceiving things was different. They aren't their best person because they're so stressed out that they're not able to analyze data or act in an appropriate way.
So you either taken the IAT and you've identified your personal biases, or you are just incredibly observant and you can identify the biases of those around you. One of the easiest things you can do to work to combat those biases is simply spend time with as many different types of groups of people as possible. One study found that although this says GLBT, the official title of the community is LGBTQA, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, and allies. So this is maybe about 8 months ago. Who knows what it's going to be?
Change the slide.
Yeah, who knows what it's going to be in about 4 months. But basically, individuals who have LGBTQA members of their family or very close friends are significantly less biased, both overtly and in implicit bias tests against members of this community, which sounds pretty reasonable, right? That's a given. What's interesting to me is that that is known as a high contact exposure. There's also such things as low contact exposure, and the research has found that even exposure so low as simply reading biographies of families that are non-traditional, and we're seeing pictures of happy non-traditional families, significantly reduces people's biases towards members of the LGBTQA community. And so this, I think, personally is very interesting because this is such an easy way for us to help combat bias, not just in the legal community, but in the community at large. So a few other ways that you can combat hidden biases are simply reframe the conversation. You don't have to call somebody out, you don't even have to call yourself out for biases, but be willing to demand or to seek fair treatment and respect, both first and foremost for yourself, but also for those around you. Working in public interest, sometimes we work with a lot of people that other members of society deem unmentionables, whether that's because they're in and out of the criminal justice system, or because they are members of low socioeconomic classes, or because they are diverse members of society. And unfortunately, you may see yourself or your colleagues treating these individuals a certain way. And if you can help those individuals and help yourself focus on fair treatment and respect, it's going to go a long way. Of course, supporting projects that encourage positive images instead of stereotypes. The fact that we still have stereotypes in 2013 blows my mind, but stuff aside.
Can I just stop for 1 second to stereotypes? We cut like 75% of this presentation to try to fit it in, but just to take you back to the history of all this. When man was new, the cavemen who survived were the cavemen who saw all these millions of data points and made assumptions to narrow down the data points. So the cavemen who saw this swirly, stick on the ground and who jumped back and said, snake, I mean, that caveman probably lived to have kids. And so what we're asking you to do is to understand that the way you take information and analyze it and put it in compartments, everyone does it, that's normal, that's why your ancestors survived, but we're smart enough to try to decouple things and to look at data and to look at individuals and situations in a realistic way.
Again, just rethinking your tolerance for inequity and focusing on fair treatment for all. One thing, this slide is, again, another one of the slides I really like because there are definitely times where I feel conflicted or annoyed because I catch myself maybe thinking certain things about people and I don't want to. Well, thankfully, if you are one of those people who catches yourself and you feel conflicted about it, at least you're thinking about it, so feel free to give yourself one back. What you don't want to be is one of the people who goes through your life treating people a certain way and never giving yourself time to think about why you're doing it.
One of my least favorite things someone tells me, I think they're complimenting me, is they say, I don't see race. And for me, as a 53-year-old African-American woman who grew up in Iowa, who confronted race every single second of my life, that is maybe the primary part of who I am. So this is my favorite slide. So, but what I expect people is not to say, I don't see that you're a black woman. I want you to see that I'm a black woman, and I want you to have offered to you and to me, maybe conversations to me about how did that feel, can I do this, what do you think about that? Because I am seeing that you are committed, this part, that you are going to be committed to that. And to me, that's how you grow, that's how I grow, that's how real relationships are made. Don't be afraid to talk about things to people who are different than you. Just go out there, be well-meaning, and get someplace different than where you were before you started the conversation. There's some shared space where both people through the conversation have shared a meaning. So this is my favorite.
Just don't ask anyone to touch their hair. That's like
Okay. So maybe people don't know by that.
Oh, okay, if you don't know what I mean by that. I'm all for, if you have questions about culture, feel free to ask. You know, if you want to know what it's like to be a black woman or what it's like to be a lesbian or, you know, feel free to ask people, talk to them about that. But I've had colleagues, unfortunately, which means they have passed the bar, who think it's acceptable to ask you in your office if they can touch your hair, because they've never touched hair like yours before. Thankfully, everyone in the audience is looking at me like that's ridiculous, which means all of you are much more enlightened than those two individuals were. They are enlightened now. But it's just, I think everyone, as Leslie said, appreciates open dialogue and honest dialogue, but open and honest dialogue is not an excuse for you to ask inappropriate questions. Yeah.
So this is my slide. So read the two don'ts, and I'm going to tell you the story about the don'ts. So I use the don'ts to make an assumption, and I'm just going to give you an example. And I hope I'm not embarrassing you with my stories, but I'm trying to make people think rather than just reading words. But so I was in a situation recently where a certain ethnic type owned this little store, and every time I went in and I would give my dollar and they would put the change on the counter instead of put the change in my hand. And so that led me to think, is it something that you don't want to touch my hand? And then that would lead me to think maybe I shouldn't frequent the store, but in my brain was stored that this particular ethnic type maybe has a problem with touching a black woman's hand. And I just stored that in my hand, or in my head. So I was in a cab after that, making that assumption whether it was valid or not. And the cab driver was of the same ethnic group. And so, in a not Christian way, when I handed in the money, I didn't like hand it to him. I wanted him to like kind of turn around to kind of face me to take the money. And the man said, I can't get the money. I have a shoulder disability. I'm so sorry. And that just blew away the ladder of assumptions that I had made for myself. And as a Black woman, just underscored, how can I do this to others when I'm always thinking that others are doing it to me. So explore who you are, don't, look at those don'ts. Now to the do's. So, the story leads into this: do be suspicious of your automatic responses. I should have been suspicious, thinking that this ethnic type didn't want to touch my hand, and try to override my automatic reaction, they don't want to touch my hand, in favor of being egalitarian. So, over time, practice replacing bias with judgments that conform to who you want to be. Know that who you want to be is always a moving target, and the more you work at it, the sooner you're going to get there. Develop a motivation to avoid prejudice, and be willing to reject automatic preferences.
So if you have an automatic preference that you'd rather not have, the good news is that you're not stuck with it for the rest of your life. I mean, our preferences are malleable. It's very easy to simply seek experiences and spend time with people that can help you reverse these patterns. One thing I want to say is that you don't have to be friends with everybody. We all know that jerks come in every race, creed, sexual orientation, gender, socioeconomic status. You thinking someone's a jerk does not make you a bad person, unless you think someone's a jerk because they are X. And so I don't want you to be too hard on yourself going forward. Sometimes after this presentation, I think people search themselves and really are trying to work out all of their implicit biases, and they think that they just have to be happy-go-lucky 24 hours a day. You don't. Our goal is just that you are happy-go-lucky or angry to everybody, unequal. So, does everyone see this? Okay, can someone tell me what they think it is?
Swan?
You guys have
Squirrel and swan.
Oh, yeah, I see a little bunny on that side, and then looks like a duck and a bunny. Oh, yeah.
So why
Discussion.
No, I see it like there's a duck and a bunny. I see that.
I don't know.
I think it's every
So woman in the sweater. Why was that the motif for this presentation?
Unity, I'm guessing. The combination of both, like a duck or a bird and a rabbit or a squirrel. These animals are.
Don't assume that it's a duck. Don't assume that it's a squirrel. Good answer. And then, I don't know, I guess, so this is when the dean of NIU Law School and the head of HR, Hinshaw, and I sat down. We actually read these 32 articles, but they're attached. And so if you want to do more, there's some really fascinating articles here that cover everything from the election to why beautiful women make, I think, $230,000 more in their careers than non-beautiful women. I mean, this bibliography covers lots of things. But you got to have. I hope you have questions, because I think we cut this way too far to the bone. It would take longer. What questions do you have?
I have a common problem when I'm doing intake either in person or on the phone. People will say, oh, I can tell by your voice you're white, get me a black lawyer. And I'm like, okay, well, and I don't really know how to address sort of my own biases. Then I have to be careful on saying like, oh, all poor people only want their own ethnic type to represent them, which is a bias of my own. But also, like, I'm fairly confident, at least in doing intake, and they have a bias that I won't treat them fairly because of their ethnic group or because of my age, like you were saying.
What's your answer? So when someone says that to you, what do you say to them?
If I'm feeling feisty, I say, well, if we lived in a fair world, there would actually be a black lawyer here that I could refer you to, but we don't actually have any, so you're stuck with me. Or something
So what you're saying, you're saying that there is no black lawyer here because blacks aren't capable of being attorneys, and so their assumption is going to be that you are not going to be their advocate.
Yeah, that was not a constructive thing to say, and I apologize immediately afterwards.
We've all been there. I have definitely been there. I do intake twice a week with my pro bono project, and I've had people say similar things to me, which is interesting because I am black. But I think one of my go-to is that I always try to let the person know we're on the same team. You're calling here, you'd like assistance, I'm here, I'm willing to help. Unfortunately, if you don't want it, I can give you a number to another public aid resource. I think sometimes pushing back against people a little bit and letting them know, for whatever reason that you don't want to talk to me, let me just let you know, you don't have to have those assumptions. And so we're all on the same team. I'm here, I'm willing to help you. Give me the chance. And if they don't, then unfortunately for them, they missed out. They're going to have to call somebody else and not be able to work with you.
I would develop a narrative for yourself. I would say, I'm doing this kind of work because I think it's very important for everyone to have equal access to justice. I understand why you might want to, why you feel that way, but I hope you won't be able to judge me on my performance. I guess I would have a standard answer that's authentic and that you believe, and see what happens. Go ahead.
So this is a dilemma I sometimes face where, depending on who I'm dealing with, whether it might be a person of a different ethnic background, or more often it's somebody who doesn't have the same educational background that I do. They might, the way they speak is a little bit more conversational. They have, other words that I probably wouldn't use, or the grammar that they speak I might not use. So I've always been conflicted about, should I kind of adopt the way that they speak, which would be totally inauthentic, or speak the way I speak, which is, I know I don't want to come across as condescending, but that's just, how I'm going to speak. I'm not going to, speak like really slang, bad grammar, or something like that.
Star?
Well, I think it's much easier to just be yourself 100% of the time. And from working with a lot of men who are older than my dad and just do not share my interests, who try to adopt what they think is my lingo, it always falls flat. And then you just end up not respecting the person or thinking they're trying too hard. So I think you can just be who you are. I don't think anyone in here is dropping $30 words every time they speak. That's going to cause the people that you're helping out not to be able to follow you. But I think you doing the right thing and you using whatever syntax and grammar you use on a regular basis, continue to use that going forward.
Being authentic is, I think, the key to most things, because these situations are stressful, right? They're stressful for you, it's stressful for the people you're trying to help. And to adopt a persona that's not you, it takes so much energy. It's very hard to maintain. So I wouldn't do it. I would just be whoever you are.
And I did find when I was a public defender that my clients would eventually adopt either some of my phrases or some of the words I used when we did have to appear in front of the judge, or we did have conferences with the prosecutor's office. And so if you are just being yourself and giving them the legal terms and giving them a little bit of knowledge that they can hold on to and then use, either when you go back to school in the fall, or if they happen to work with another individual in the office, at least they'll have something that they can take with them and something they can feel comfortable using when they get in a formal situation.
I know something.
Yes, ma'am?
I recently had an experience, and I'm curious if you feel what you've been talking about relates to it or not. And that is, it was an immigrant woman, Chinese culture, and her by the time they arranged for her to come to this country, her spouse died less than a year later, and so then she was in kind of immigration hell because there were lots of things going on. But in any event, and I sort of wanted to express sympathy about that. I said, I'm sorry, that must be really hard for you. And she started crying, and and I'm curious whether, when you're trying to engage someone and express some sympathy or compassion for what they're going through, do you find that there are differences across culture, race, things, the inappropriateness of that, or?
I've never, I think what you did was beautiful. I don't think it's inappropriate. I think what you're talking about more is differences among people, whether you're what culture they're in. But I guess one thing people have to, the risk you have to take when you try to reach across any kind of cultural or differences among people is that it's going to be awkward, that you're going to make mistakes, you're going to feel stupid a lot of the time, you're going to maybe cry, laugh, do things that are inappropriate, but are you authentic, are you well-meaning? If the other person is judging you that you're well-meaning and that you're trying to do this to reach across to them, I think in the end it's all good.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Just in general about the presentation, is this going to be available to look at either by email or something? Just the presentation in general and resources. I think you mentioned
I thought we did, but maybe when we send the statement.
It's going to be okay.
We will attach this presentation. When we did it, this presentation has been given from an hour to 3 hours, and that was our deal, that we would spend all this time so that as many people can hear it as possible.
And I'll just jump in. As I mentioned earlier, we are webcasting this, and the resources are available on that site as well.
They're also on your shared Google Drive.
On the shared drive.
You have access to that.
Do you have the commitment?
We don't have that on there, so if you want to send that to me, I'll definitely put that.
Yes, Ruth. I just had a question in my office. I have several attorneys that I get to supervise, that are my supervisors. And one of the attorneys, I feel that depending on the client, is just much more aggressive and gets really frustrated. And obviously we serve low-income and poor-state people who just don't understand the process, don't have money for their own attorney, and are already, frustrated. And seeing this attorney just be really aggressive makes me kind of uncomfortable. I've seen another supervisor kind of tell her a few times, hey, can you be a little less aggressive? Is there anything, in my position as the intern, what do I say? I find myself I do the intake, so when I know those clients are coming, she's going to be more aggressive with, I try to give them to another attorney. But ultimately, I don't think it's solving anything.
Do you notice the pattern as to who they're aggressive?
I think, so part of what we do a lot of foreclosures, and then we also do CHA, so Section 8, when it's been terminated, we do appeals. And I feel like it's always those that are Section 8 appeals that she just gets sort of frustrated with. And I don't know if it's just a bias towards Section 8, or they tend to be predominantly African American, if that's something that makes her uncomfortable.
I will tell you, I'll take this one. Leslie, I'm sure, might have something different. But I'm the baby attorney at my firm, so I'm exactly where you are on the totem pole. My advice would be, no, you don't bring it up to the person. Because you don't, in an ideal world, you would bring it up, your boss would say, you know what, oh my gosh, thank you for opening my eyes. I'm going to be so much better going forward. In this world, I have never had that happen. But I have had someone blackball me going forward because I chose to bring up an issue, right? So I think what you're doing is the best way you can do it. As we said, maybe about 7 slides back, you're really focusing on just fair treatment across the board for everybody. And I think you trying to make sure everyone gets that and working behind the scenes. Thank you for doing that. I hope that you're able, to keep it up for the rest of the summer. But when you leave at the end of the summer, you want to be able to go wherever you want to go. And if you call this individual out on their behavior, I guarantee you that they will likely call you out against employers in the future, and you do not want that, unfortunately.
I'm sorry to hear what Star said, although it's good advice. I mean, I'm sorry that it's probably the reality, and it's good advice. I've usually taken a different path in my life than even when I was young. But to figure out, so what I usually try to do is figure out patterns. I'm a very big pattern. And so I try to figure out patterns, figure out what that says about the person maybe, and then go to the person and say, I've noticed these 5 cases, boom, boom, boom. But there's a huge downside to things like that, and stars right, who are young, have clear to think about. So it really is an individual decision, but no one's going to judge you poorly if you don't do anything because of where you are in your life and what you're trying to build to.
And one thing, if I can just leave you guys with, in addition to this, but one piece of advice that I really got when I graduated was that if you do happen to work with someone that you disagree with, right? Either they're rude, they don't know what they're doing, they're not putting the right amount of time with clients, they're on their way out and you're on your way up. And so it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but if you just bite your tongue, you're going to be the person making the decisions should you want to be that person in a couple of years. But first and foremost, you've got to look out for you. And so if you do what you need to do when they're out and they're retired or they're senior status and nobody's giving them any cases because they don't trust them, and then you're making the decisions, then you can help make sure that the organization you're a part of is moving forward the way that you want it to move forward.
And the nice thing is the world is changing. So for my time, I'm 54, I'm 53, my time, I felt as if I had to make more personal, individual stands because my world was not changing. I mean, my world is pretty harsh. But your world is changing, so you can pick your time and your place better because, as I don't know how to describe it exactly, but the history is evolving. The tide of history is evolving on these issues, so it doesn't feel as if it's a guerrilla war like it felt earlier, at least to me.
Leslie,
go ahead.
Leslie and I will be up here if anybody else wants to come and ask us questions. Please come and ask us questions so I can live my dream of being a professor. Thank you so very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you for joining us. And just wanted to let you know there is a seminar next week, immigration law updates, so please RSVP and we hope to see you then.
Patrick, what's going on, man? Sorry,
I think most clients are going to understand and they just want to which, I mean, was better than it was. It was nice because I said,
Yeah, all right.
why did you show up late?
So it's like really
You're the last person here. Well, thank you for.
Yeah, no, I know, but I was, why was it telling me to come in here? Oh, no, I was in trouble a lot. I did, you know. Did you have fun yesterday? Yeah. I've never sometimes that's better. Because that's what sounds so long. Did you go get marks?
I should be taking it easy.
So I did a lot of between classes, you know.
Yeah, so exactly. That's okay. That's okay. I learned a lot of my own bias. I mean,
The one you were asking me about.
Oh, yeah, who was it? Right, this is Leslie.
Maybe not by.
I get confused in stores, and no matter, like, I could be dressed like this, and I could be shop. I mean, I could be in a Target, and someone will think that I'm a salesperson. That always happens. Like,
I mean, this is a little bit different, but I was reading an article about black women doctors, and they always get thought as surgeons, almost all the time.
My dentist does that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that people, if she's sitting in the front, they come and ask her stuff. I haven't had that, but, I mean.
oh, I have all the time. Do you know, Henderson?
Bill Henderson?
Yeah.
He's, I had him, he and I are very close.
I'm not, oh,
Yeah.
Leslie, I'm the chair of this organization, he came in
Oh, yeah.
Chicago committee.
Well, he comes to Chicago, like,
I know,
every
he's
year,
fabulous.
meet somebody or talk to somebody or whatever. So I have trouble getting in touch with him because he's here, so.
He's everywhere, but tell him I can,
I will.
all right.
All right, well,
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Should we give this?
Oh, thank you.
No worries.
Appreciate it.
How do you like the increase there?
It's good, it's really interesting. Yeah.
Leslie, don't picture
Yeah, but-
pin. And I've got to get this up.
What's the price?
Are you coming to the Supreme Court review? Yes.
Yeah, actually, ACLU had this when we were talking, and one of my professors that I use
Oh,
Sanders.
good. Who?
Steve Sanders.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've worked with him on a project.
Did you work with Professor Brown?
You know Fred Brown?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, because I pretty much know every law professor in Indiana.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, remember went to, who was his name? Sorry. He was my law
Oh, that's
professor.
right. I've never had him, but I've chatted with him. He's a cool guy. He's very unapologetic about it.
Well, he is, and his house is ridiculous.
Oh, you've been to his house?
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah, with the lions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, why would you make this inappropriate? Yeah.
All conventions. Yeah, I've been there several times.
Yeah, I like it.
He likes those things too.
Yeah, I like paramedics, fine. I like the first officers. And then,
Are we out? Did we use that?
the guy who's always wearing the,
Jernigan. The suits?
Yes!
Top hat?
Yes!
I have the shorts.
we both were a serious undersuit.
I've learned a lot about fashion.
Because he's a man.
Yeah.
Because literally, it's like 120 slides that are just kind of like made guess.
Which
like-
makes it sometimes more
Teach the rest of the
confusing for them because it's like,
What we need to do is get the rest of the PIA lives.
Good.
And all the